friends, Amanda here. Welcome back to Handmade Now Hallmark. Today I've got this beautiful window scene card featuring some awesome products from HoneyBee. I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. The first thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to get all of my ink blending done so it all had an opportunity to dry completely before I started creating my card. I'm going to create one of my favorite winter scenes, or excuse me, my winter skies, and it is my nice blue winter sky. And I'm going to start out with some regular distress inks. I decided I wanted to use the regular instead of the oxides. I love my oxides, but I really wanted to break out my other ones. I haven't used them in quite a long time, and I always forget that I have them because I get so caught up using my oxides, and I just love the regular distress inks as well. You could do this with the distress oxides, and you can do this with any of your inks that you have on hand. Going to go in with some Salty Ocean, and then I'm going in with Blueprint Sketch to create that nice transition, and then I'm going to finish it off with some Black Soot. As you well know, that this is one of my favorite ink blending techniques to create a beautiful winter sky, and that's kind of what I'm going for in my little scene here. I was kind of envisioning looking through the window and seeing the snow falling down, and you have some, a swag or some garland or anything like that decorating your tree. So that's kind of the idea I was going for here. I really wanted it to translate as you were looking through a window and looking out into the winter sky. Once I have that all ink blended and I love the way that it looks, I'm going to add some snow, which is one of, again, my favorite things to do. Get that all ink blended here. And I wasn't too concerned about the far edges, just kind of what was going on in the middle. That's where I'm going to do my cutting a little bit later and where my window is going to kind of focus. So I'm going to go in with my homemade shimmer spray. This is just some perfect pearl powder and some water in a little mister bottle. And I love the effect that this gives. It really adds that shimmer and sparkle that I really like to all of my winter skies. Just hitting that with my heat gun just to kind of help with the drying process while I go in and add my white gouache snowflakes. This is some Winsor & Newton white gouache. I've had this little container for the longest time, and you only need a tiny bit to create some wonderful little snowflakes here. And I just spritz it with some water, and I get a tiny paintbrush, and I just utilize another one to create those fun snowflakes. Once that's all finished, I can set that off to the side to dry completely before we start utilizing it as our little scene here. Gonna get that all set off to the side and get my little waffle mat cleaned off here. So I did some pre-die cutting. This is the Winter Bouquets Honey Cuts dies from HoneyBee Stamps. This is one of my absolute favorite honey cuts from HoneyBee. I have used it several times over the years in my Christmas card series, and it will still be forever featured, I think, in my series. It is just a wonderful, versatile little die set that you can use lots of the elements to create some beautiful cards. I'm going in with some Distress Oxide inks now, and I am ink blending my die cuts. Now, you could color these die cuts any way that you like. I think over the years I have shown using Copics, I have shown using regular colored cardstock, and now I wanted to share with you that you can color these in with your inks. And again, you could use any inks that you have on hand. You could use dye inks, distress inks. You could use watercolor. I've seen lots of people do some watercoloring. I think these would be a fun technique to use some like ink smushing, because you get some really cool color combinations. I think that would be really fun and pretty. Again, I'm just going in with two colors here. This is Fired Brick and Aged Mahogany, just to add some dimension to these beautiful poinsettias. And then I am going to go in with a teeny tiny bit of Black Soot. I am just using what is on my blending brush here, and again, just to deepen that color and to really make it shine. You could leave that step out if you don't want to add that, but again, it's all personal preference, and this is just what I feel personally it looks really nice. Once I get all of these poinsettias ink blended, I'm going to work on my other elements, and I'm just going to speed up the video just a little bit here just to push through it. This is a little bit longer video, and I'm glad you're sticking in here with me, but I do have a lot of ink blending, and I left it all in the video because I know some folks like to see that. Next I'm doing the pine boughs here, and I'm going to be using the Iced Spruce Distress Oxide ink, and I think this is a beautiful color for these branches. I probably next time, just to make them stand out a little bit more, maybe would have gone in with pine bough Distress Oxide color. I think that it would really make them stand out just a tiny bit more. I mean, I think they look beautiful. I went in with a little bit of black soot just to kind of give them some depth. But I think this is a wonderful color. I love it a lot. I think I would have gone in with a little bit more green just to make them stand out a bit more. Again, I'm going to clean off my surface here and go in with the rest of my ink blending. And I've got some more of their greenery here from that same stamp set. And I'm going to be using some Rustic Wilderness to add some color to those. And this waffle mat is wonderful for holding down these tiny die cuts. This works out wonderful. I am so glad that I got this waffle flower stencil mat. I think I might have to upgrade and get the larger one because I do a lot of ink blending. Now that I have this, I found that I am actually doing a lot more ink blending than I used to because it's just so handy and it works out wonderful. Using the little branches here, and we're going to get the centers of our poinsettias colored in here, and I'm going to be using some Fossilized amber to color those in. And I did add a little bit of black soot and I was like, that's not right. So I went back over with the Fossilized amber to get those a nice yellow color. Gonna get everything set off to the side and gonna get my mat cleaned off again. And we're going to work on the background for our whole scene. So I wanted to create kind of a shiplap look to my scene. So it looked like we're looking at the wall and the window. So in my house, we have shiplap walls, and we put our Christmas tree up right in front of a window every year. And it is one of my favorite things about our house. And I really wanted to kind of create that look with these shiplap wall. So I'm just using some wood grain cardstock from Simon Says Stamp, and I cut the strips into about 1 inch wide, and I have them cut to fit my card base. Now my card base is going to be, it's going to start out as a 5.5 or a 5x7 card, but I do end up trimming it down, and it's kind of turns out to be a little bit of an odd size. But I'm going to share a picture of my Christmas tree from last year and the shiplap walls and kind of the inspiration behind my card. And I just love how it looks every year, and I really wanted to kind of bring that in a card form. And I think this shiplap wall turns out wonderful. I love this idea, and it was really easy to put together. I'm just going in with some Hickory Smoke Distress ink, a Distress Oxide ink, and then I'm going to go in with just a tiny bit of black soot just to add the kind of depth. And it's kind of a nighttime scene, so the lights would be low, so it would be casting some shadows on the wall, kind of like it does in my own home. And again, I love how this wall turns out. I think it's going to be a fun technique to do later on. And I think you could color these in any colors. So if you have more of brown colored walls, you could do that, or, you know, change it up for any season. I think it's a really wonderful idea and technique to do. Once I have my walls all ink blended and ready to go, we can work on getting the card assembled. Once my ink blending was all done, I got my card base here, and I'm going to adhere my strips of wood grain cardstock to my background. Now, again, this was really simple, and what I did was I just started out with one piece right at the top, and I'm going to trim it down after I get everything adhered. And I'm just kind of leaving a really tiny gap in between each of my little wood panels here, just to kind of emulate that shiplap look or that wood wall look. I tried, or I thought about doing a darker color cardstock underneath, kind of to show that there's a gapping there, but I felt like it would have been too obvious. So just going in and adding it with a little bit of a gap in between on this white cardstock, I think worked out perfectly. And I had just enough strips, and excuse me. And again, I love how this turns out. It does end up being cut a little bit of a different size, and that's just because I didn't like where I had everything placed. I kind of placed everything a little bit lower on my card base, and I didn't like all the empty space at the top. Now you could probably have filled it in, but I just decided to later on trim that down so that it looked a little bit more even and went well together. So I just got out my big paper trimmer here, and I'm trimming off all of the leftover pieces on the edge so that it's all nice and even all the way around. And I love that look. I think it is so pretty. I think it turns out beautifully. And now we can get to working on the main part of our card, which is the window. And I'm going to be using the Tim Holtz window frames. And these are like a heavy chipboard, and they're all these different sizes of windows and different shapes. Adhered my blue frame to the window itself, and then I just trimmed around the edges so that everything was behind the arch itself. And it was super easy. I just glued it down and trimmed it out, and I do apologize that I didn't get that on screen. I'm not sure if my camera cut out on me or where that footage went. Next, I'm going to work on my greeting, and I'm using the Christmas scripty buzzwords from HoneyBee as well, and I am just stacking up some layers of cardstock here. These are 2 different tones of red cardstock, but I just needed to use up some scraps from my bin, and I wanted to create a nice dimensional greeting to go along with all of the other dimension that's going on my card. So I just took the kind of the shadow that goes to the main greeting, and I cut it out 4 times out of this red cardstock, and I stacked it all up, and then I cut out the main Christmas portion out of some gold shimmer cardstock. And I'm just using my Barely Arts liquid adhesive to attach all of these together. And I just love the big kind of chunky greeting that you get, and it'll hold up beautifully with the other larger elements of our card. Going to get that adhered down. Now I did have a little bit of trouble, so you're going to see here that I get it kind of adhered down, but then I fiddle with it and it gets covered in glue. And because this is mirror cardstock, you're going to see it. It shows up so well. I tried to clean it off, but I just decided to peel that off, re-die cut it, and then adhere it back down. So you can see here that I get it adhered, somewhat nice, and I was trying to get everything lined up, and I ended up getting it covered in glue. And I was just getting really frustrated, but I didn't freak out too bad. So I just peeled it off here, and then I just die cut another one and stuck it down. I tried not to use as much adhesive. This adhesive is really, really nice. It sticks well, but sometimes it sticks almost too fast, especially with these fiddly kind of dies. So then you don't get an opportunity to kind of wiggle them into place. So I'm just going to take my time here and get that lined up. And it's all good to go, no harm, no foul, and I can continue on with my card. And then we're going to get the little tittle on the eye attached as well. I had that set aside in a little bowl so I didn't lose it. I always end up losing them, and then I have to cut it again so I have the little dot. It can be frustrating, but I found that if I save it into a little bowl, I can't lose it. I love how this greeting turns out. I love the red and gold together. I think they're a beautiful color combination, and the shimmer is just enough for any Christmas card. Next, I'm going to do my accessory greetings. They're going to go with my Christmas greeting. And I'm just taking out some black cardstock, and I'm going to heat emboss with some Versamark ink and some Brutus Monroe Alabaster White embossing powder. So my greeting will say, "Merry Christmas from our family to yours." And I'm going to cut these out freehand. So these came in the Christmas greeting stamp set that kind of coordinates with the die, and it doesn't cut out the accessory greetings, so I'm going to freehand cut those myself. This is another technique that I love to do. If I think I can cut it out and it'll still look nice, I will cut it out. If not, I will use a banner die. These ones were perfectly sized and small enough that I could cut them out freehand, and I think they look wonderful on the card after I get everything heated up. Now that I have all of the pieces ready to go for my card, I can do the final assembly. I'm going to attach all of my pieces here for the poinsettia together, just using that same Barely Arts adhesive, and I'm adhering everything nice and flat to each other. You could easily add dimension in between the layers here, but I felt like there was plenty of dimension in the different layers, and whenever I start stacking everything up, I get a lot of nice dimension later on. Get all those adhered down here, and we can get this card going. I just love how this looks. I'm gonna add a little bit of more gold kind of to enhance the gold that's already on the card. So I've got some of this Foundry wax, and I'm going to add it to the poinsettias. So I just take a little bit out here, and I'm going to take a little paintbrush, and I'm just going to brush it on the edges of the poinsettia. And it doesn't look like much whenever you brush it on. It just looks kind of dull, and you know, which I think is a pretty look as well. But to get this Foundry wax to really work, you have to hit it with your heat gun. And it's a really nice kind of alternative to embossing powder. If you don't like working with the powder, this Foundry wax works out beautifully as well. And I think it's a really nice product, and a little goes a long way with this. I didn't end up using that whole blob, so I could have got away with a little bit less. And then I'm going to hit it with my heat gun, and you can really see the Foundry wax come to life. It only takes a tiny bit of heat, and it really starts to shine, and I think it matches well with my greeting. I could have added it to the other elements as well, but I decided to just do it on the poinsettias. I felt like it was a nice happy medium, so I didn't overload the card with gold and shimmer, which I sometimes do. So get that Foundry wax put away here, and I can get everything ready to go for the card. So I'm just going to adhere the window portion down nice and flat to my card base. And this adheres beautifully, and it's not super thick either. It's a nice, just kind of almost chipboard, and I think it fits wonderfully on the card. It doesn't add too much bulk, so it'll easily mail nicely. Now, this is the type of card I would either put in a bubble mailer so it's protected nicely, or I would hand deliver this card. Just because of the dimension on the petals, and it's kind of, the other elements are kind of fiddly, I wouldn't want them to get crushed or bent in any way during transit. So I could use a bubble mailer or hand deliver it. Next, I'm going to add the other poinsettias, and I'm just going to use a combination of liquid adhesive and some foam squares just to get everything kind of on the same level. And I love how this turns out. I love how it looks like a nice swag on a window. Get everything kind of tucked in here, right where I want it, so I can just go around and adhere everything. Love how this looks. And the little twigs, we're going to add some little red berries to those a little bit later. Just to add a touch more red to the card and to make it look like some nice berries. Love how that's looking, and I'm going to go ahead and start gluing everything down using that same Bearly Arts adhesive. This is where I like having the Bearly Arts adhere a little bit fast so that I don't bump anything and I get it exactly where I want it the first time. I love all of these little greeneries together. I have used these dies in the past for some of my cards. They have been some of my absolute favorite Christmas cards over the years. My first circle card that I created, I used this set, and then I used it, I think, the year before, and I created something similar with the wood grain, and I think I used the same greeting, but I love that you can utilize it in a couple of different ways using some of the same elements. It's a really versatile set. Get that other one adhered in here, get it all tucked in there. That's one thing that I don't do, is I don't decorate my windows a whole lot during Christmas, and I think it's because I have lots of little fingers, and I've got dogs, and I worry about them just getting knocked over or chewed on or played with, those sorts of things. So it's mostly just the Christmas tree and maybe a wreath or two here and there, and that's kind of the extent of my greenery when it comes to holiday decorating. I'd like to know, how do you guys use greenery? Do you use greenery a lot? Do you do a lot of swags and garlands and all sorts of fun things, or are you more kind of laid back and simple with just a few items here and there? Let me know down in the comments what you do for your holiday decorating. Next, I'm going to get my greeting attached here. I'm going to be attaching it down to the top portion of my window here, and this is where I realized that I had a lot of empty space at the top of my card. Now I could have added, there's a bow in this die set. I could have added a bow with a little bit more swag around the top, and that way I wouldn't lose the actual size of a 5x7 card, but I didn't want to go overboard. I didn't want to do too much and it looked too crowded, and I was really kind of stuck on this idea here. So once I get my other greetings added to the card here, I do trim it down a bit on the top. Now the finished card size will be 6.5 by 5, so it's just a tiny bit shorter than a 5x7. So it will still fit in a 5x7 envelope, so it will still easily mail just fine if I wanted to send it that way. Gonna adhere the last two portions of my greeting with some foam tape and some liquid glue. I added some foam tape to the second one because it does overhang the window frame a bit and there is some dimension, so I wanted to make sure that it wouldn't flatten or misshape in any way. And I love that Merry Christmas from our family to yours. Love how that looks. And I'm going to get my base ready. So I made everything 5x7, and then I went in and I cut it down after I had it adhered to the base. That way I didn't have to kind of try to fit everything on the base. Because I'm cutting it from the top of the card, it wasn't too much of a problem getting it to fit in my paper trimmer and trimming off the top. Next, I'm going to stamp a greeting on the inside of my card. You could easily leave this step out. Sometimes I add greetings, sometimes I don't. It's just a personal preference. This one I just pulled from my stash, and I'm going to stamp it down using some Schoolhouse Red ink from Simon Says. And I think it's a nice mix with the reds on the front of the card and the red on the inside. And it says, "May your holiday season be filled with peace and love." Wonderful set. I love this greeting, and I think it goes well together. Gonna get my base adhered to my card panel, or get my card panel adhered to my card base, and then I can trim that down and it'll be nice and good to go. And then I'm gonna go in with some embellishments and finish up the card. Get that adhered down here. Love how that looks. At first when I looked at it, I thought it was crooked. I thought that my window was crooked, but it's just an optical illusion. From all of the swag on the one side, it looks like it's tilted, but it is definitely not tilted. It is straight. I made sure of that. Next, I'm going to go in with one of my white jelly roll pens and add just a few more snowflakes in the background just to kind of add a bit more interest. And then I'm going to go in with some of my other pens here. I'm going to go in with my shimmer pen and add some shimmer to some of the greenery and the poinsettias. Again, just to add a little bit more interest. Definitely could leave this step out. And then I'm going to go in with my favorite Trinity Stamps snowflake embellishments to add some snowflakes in the background to really hit home that we're looking through a window out into the winter sky. I was going to use that really large snowflake, but I felt like it was a bit much. So I decided to just stick with the smaller ones. And I am using my fingers because it is a tried and true method to get these to stick instead of trying to fiddle and fuss with some of my other elements that I have for picking up embellishments. Get one more added down there. And then I'm going to go in with some Autumn Red Nouveau Crystal Drops, and I'm going to add little berries to my twigs. And you could go in with some embellishments ahead of time, you could go in with some just round embellishments, but I didn't want anything too big. And I know that some embellishments can be a bit large, and I wanted something really small so it didn't take away from my scene. So I'm just going to go in really carefully and add a few of those red dots to each of the little berry twigs here. And I sped this portion up a little bit because I was very meticulous about this. I took my time to make sure that I didn't screw it up and that they looked a lot like berries. And that will finish up this card for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider hitting the like button as well as to subscribe. It lets YouTube know that you're enjoying the content that I bring to you. And if you hit the little notification bell, you'll be notified every time that I upload a video, especially during my Christmas card series. Again, I hope you enjoyed this die-cut window scene card featuring some awesome products from HoneyBee. I really enjoyed how this card turned out, and I hope you did as well. I can't wait to share with you some more cards, and I'll see you guys again real soon. Bye!
On screen, I've got a few videos that I think you'll enjoy. Consider hitting the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any more videos at my YouTube channel.